Every great creative work stands on the shoulders of giants. Welcome to RetroInspection, where we examine and find out where the things we love today came from.
Of all the books that we have read up to this point, including Harlan's I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, this is, for me, the most enjoyable of the bunch. It really, the way that Norton writes is so clear, it's so concise, it puts you in the moment, it lets you understand the motivations and actions of the different characters in a completely unobtrusive way. It's very even-handed in the way it's written. Even the people who are sometimes in the moment villains, you get the sense that they're real people with real motivations, and they have real feelings, and their motivations aren't just some sort of cookie cutter, kind of thing. They're people. They're actual living people in the moment.
The tribes people, yes. The Reds are pretty much just like a rabble of unintelligible thugs.
Well, that is true, and really, there aren't too many. In fact, there's only one character who is a Red that you get any idea of what they're trying to do.
Because he speaks English, and the rest of them are just like, that shit. So, yeah. Do you think that gets us into a thing of pre-war pulp versus post-war pulp? I don't have an explanation for it, but this is 58 versus 39, 44. I can't remember when the heck. I just spaced on when the Lensman was written.
Oh, I think that was 38.
Or is this just individual? Is this just individual authors? And just differences between them, or do you think pulp becomes less pompous after the war?
That's a good question, and I have also read. I'm not as widely read as you are in many things, but I have read a science fiction compendium of pulps. Well, just pulps in general that had. The pulps were wide ranging, so it was science fiction, horror, fantasy, all of that.
Right.
And it really was author dependent. Some of these pulp short stories and books were really good, and I enjoyed them. But I do think that, especially the short stories, you get into what you were talking about in some of our earlier episodes, where there's this money crunch for the writers, where they have to fill the page or they have to stop short of the stories, right?
Yeah. I mean, and this wasn't like a pay rate for everybody. There was, there is always the popular notion of the penny a word writing.
And well, it's a penny a word, but then they were given limits about what they could actually write, because these are actual physical pages.
Yep.
They had to have room for ads, and other authors, et cetera, et cetera. So, you might have gotten a 3,000 word limit.
On one hand, the other hand is those pages needed to be filled.
Right.
So, the editor and the publisher is going to pay somebody. So as long as the pages get filled, he doesn't care, because there are instances where you got guys writing under different pen names still, and somebody could have 4 stories in one issue of whatever, Dime Detective, Black Mass.
Well, let me ask you this question, because you know a lot more about the history of this. Were there times when a writer would turn in 3,500 words in a 3,000 word limit, And then the editor, without the writer doing anything, maybe because the writer's busy or whatever, just takes chunks out without really caring about the narrative.
Oh, probably. I mean, I can't cite a specific instance that I know of, but certainly that happened. And yeah, these editors in many cases, not being writers themselves, may have done it in a real haphazard fashion. I mean, that's how the inverted pyramid style of journalistic writing got started. Because if a guy goes over the limit, they just start chopping at the bottom. So that's why you put the least important stuff at the bottom. That's why you are taught. Have you ever taken journalism class?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Okay, so you remember they drill that goddamn lead structure in you. You get your 5 W's in that lead and also because of the notion that a lot of times people may not read any further than the first paragraph. I mean, mind you, this is all back in the day when there were still newspapers.
Right, because the limits now today are.
Oh yeah, right, exactly. It's just
bandwidth, right?
Which is why things can meander, and thus the jokes about the recipes, for example.
Well, in terms of those pulp books and the pulp short stories, I did run into that where I felt like, oh, the guy needs to end the story, so he's just going to end it here, and
everyone needs to be hit by a
wraps
truck.
It up. Right, wraps it up in a nice bow and sends it off.
Like, subscribe, repost, share everywhere. To see what else we're up to, visit xynobooks.com, xenobooks.com.